Good afternoon. My name is Ray Vargo, and I am the director of the University of Pittsburgh Small Business Development Center, which is part of the Institute for Entrepreneurial Excellence at the University of Pittsburgh. Welcome to this very important webinar that is vital as you deal with this monumental disruption to your business. This webinar will be recorded and the slides will be posted and have already been posted on our resources page for your reference. We apologize for any technical issues because we have a very large amount of attendance. And again, please bear with us. Next slide, please. Please frequently visit our COVID-19 resources page as we will be updating this important information and resources as they become available. Next slide, please. Today's agenda includes a brief overview of the SBDC, information on how to apply for an SBA disaster loan, tips on working with your lender, accounting information and tax information, legal and human resources issues, and insurance information. Next slide, please. Our consulting team at the Institute for Entrepreneurial Excellence and Small Business Development Center will be working remotely, but we will be available via email, phone, and virtual meetings. We are here to help. Next slide, please. The University of Pittsburgh Small Business Development Center is part of a statewide network of small business development centers. Please visit pasbdc.org and you can find your local SBDC. We have locations throughout the Commonwealth. We as a network will be conducting additional webinars as new information and programs are revealed. The Pennsylvania Small Business Development Center network is here to help you navigate these difficult times throughout the entire Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Next slide, please. Small Business Development Centers are funded in part by the U.S. Small Business Administration, the Pennsylvania Department of Community and Economic Development via the Partnership for Regional Economic Performance, our host institutions, and our local partners. SBDCs provide no-cost and confidential consulting services. We hold educational programs and provide information and referrals to appropriate agencies and programs that can assist you as your small business in these difficult times. I am sure we will be helping you with loan resources, action planning, budgeting, projections, and will be assisting in developing new market diversification strategies in these very difficult times. Next slide. I would like to introduce Dr. Kelly Hunt, who is the Pittsburgh District Director of the U.S. Small Business Administration, to provide an overview of the SBA disaster loan programs and process. So, Dr. Hunt, thank you for joining us. Please unmute yourself.
Thanks, Ray. I appreciate the opportunity to be on the webinar today and to share a little bit about what the SBA is doing to help small businesses that are being so severely impacted by the coronavirus. You know, before I even start, I just really want to say, I know we have a lot of small businesses on the line, some of which we've all been talking to already, but I really just want to say, you know, we're in this together with you. Most of us are small business owners ourselves, and you know, and our family members, and we are all being impacted by this. And so, you know, really it is our deepest desire to provide as much assistance as we can in any way that we can. So I'm going to be talking about our loan program that is called the Economic Injury Disaster Loan. So a lot of people are familiar with SBA disaster loans. This is just one type of disaster loans that we have that we're using because of the economic impact of the coronavirus to America's small businesses, particularly the ones here in Pennsylvania and in Western Pennsylvania in our district. So you can go to the next slide. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about how to apply for these loans. As I mentioned, they are going to there you go. Sorry if I talk and the slide's not up yet, but there's a little bit of a delay. But a little bit about that, you know, like I mentioned, this is one type of a disaster loan that we have, and you know, the process is very boggled down right now. We have most of the states, all of the states in Region 3 on the on the eastern side of the country here in our region have been approved, which includes the entire state of Pennsylvania, have been approved for these loans. And so the portal is very crowded, and it was really not designed for you know, this much activity at one time. So you really have to bear with that when you're in there trying to apply. You can go to the next slide. So there's some information you can read, you know, later on. I want to kind of get into this. So when I talk about the portal, you can find that, and there is a typo on this slide. It's https:// and then the /2 slashes disasterloan.sba.gov/ELA. You can also get there from just sba.gov, and you'll see right on our banner page a lot of information about the coronavirus and small businesses, and a link to our disaster loan page. But if you want to go right to the disaster loan page, that's it, disasterloan.sba.gov/ELA. When you get to that site, you can go to the next slide. When you get to that site, you're going to be able to you know, get to a place where you're going to see these three areas, and one is going to be eligible disaster areas, and that's where you can see what areas in the United States have been approved for the COVID-19 disaster loan. When you look at that, there's really not a need to look at that, but if you were to go into that part of the portal, you'll see that the entire state of Pennsylvania has been approved. But what you want to do at the initial point is to actually go to that blue circle there and click on apply online. You can go ahead and go to the next one. And what that is going to do is going to take you to the actual EIDL portal registration site. And that is, as I mentioned, in economic injury disaster loan. We call that the EIDL loan there. And when you get there, you're going to see the first thing that you need to do is register. We've had a lot of questions about this because people maybe they're registered in SAM or they're registered in Certify, and so they think that they have an SBA registration, but this portal is completely different. So the first thing that you're going to do is click on that line there where it says register. You can go ahead and change slides. So once you do that, you're going to actually register for an account on this site so that you can go ahead and begin your loan application. And you'll see there, you know, there's a lot of things that must be completed on these. And what we really want you to do is take as much time as you can going through and, you know, trying to answer the questions so that you have that. So you're going to do that. Make sure you write your password down. And as soon as it assigns a loan number to your account there, you're going to want to write that down, because any questions that you have, you're going to need to provide that loan number. So go ahead and complete that registration part, and then go ahead and submit that. You can change the slide. So once you get to there, you're going to, after you've already now created an account, you're going to go ahead and apply online. And once you get to that next one, you're going to apply. Make sure that you click on the icon that says businesses and nonprofits, because remember, we have many different types of disaster loans, but you're applying for the economic injury disaster loan, which is for small businesses. Go ahead, next slide. So that's going to take you to a screen that is going to ask you questions about the type of business. And again, putting the wrong information in on these screens it will cause a lot of problems as you move through the process. So make sure that you list the type of business that you are, the way that your business is structured, whether you're a sole proprietor, an LLC, partnership, whatever it would be. Make sure you mark that. And then on that next question there, it's going to ask you what type of loan that you're applying for. Make sure that you click the box that says economic injury. This is really important. Economic injury, and then you'll see in parentheses EIDL. Make sure you mark that and then go to the next screen. You can go ahead and change. So once you get through that, you're going to actually just go screen by screen through the portal. You're going to answer the questions as they come up. We've had a lot of people contacting us about specific questions that you would see, come up in problems that they're having.
Rick Enscoe
You can always
is now exiting.
I'm sorry. You can always reach out to us in at my office, but the best way to find help for that is going to be to actually call into the hotline. So some of the things that you can expect, like I said, you're going to go through that whole application. You're going to have to upload documents like your taxes and things like that. And then once you've done that, you're going to submit that loan application. So what happens then? Well, we've been told so far that the decision time is going to look like it's about 21 days. And then after that, a closing will be scheduled. So, you can plan that you're probably not going to see, even if you get everything submitted, you're probably not going to see any kinds of disbursements made for at least, 4 to 5 weeks. So, this process is quicker than a lot of the things we do, but it's not going to get money in your pocket tomorrow. The SBA will schedule your closing. Within 5 days of the closing, you will get your first disbursements made, and that is going to be $25,000 for physical damage, $25,000 for economic injury, which is like your working capital for your business. So you can get up to $50,000 within the first 5 days. Now, and then you will have a case manager assigned to you that will be able to help you with that as well. You can go to the next slide. And like I mentioned, you're just going to go through, you're going to answer the questions, get everything submitted as well as you can. A couple of things there that I had already mentioned. Make sure that you are entering your business type and clicking on the correct loan program. There's some contact information on this slide. That's the 1-800 number to the actual customer service center. They can help you with the specific questions if you would have any problem with any of those on there. And you could, definitely call them and email them. A couple things that we've been told along the way, and I'll share just real briefly with you some of those things, is that we're encouraging businesses to apply for the most amount of money that they think that they will need. Because this is an open-ended announcement, we don't know when this is going to end. We don't know when the cure is going to be found and when all these businesses are going to be back up and running. So we want to make sure that they're applying for enough money to get through the process. These loans go up to $2 million. So up to $2 million. It's a 3.75% interest rate for a for-profit business. If you're a private nonprofit, you can apply for these loans as well. That interest rate is going to be 2.75 for the nonprofits, but for-profit businesses 3.75. I've had a lot of questions to ask, would that interest rate go down because the feds had lowered the rates last week. But at this point, the 3.75, which is what was written into the legislation that was passed. So no change could be made to that interest rate without that going back through Congress and Congress actually lowering that. I'm not saying that won't happen or couldn't happen. I'm just saying the SBA cannot lower the interest rate regardless what, prime would go to. Again, apply for the most amount that you need. If you would apply for $100,000 and you maybe only need 20,000 right now, you can always, decline additional disbursements of the money. So if say you've gotten 50,000, but you don't want any more, you don't have to take the whole 100,000. So that's definitely an option. There are other loan programs out there. Pennsylvania is always pretty good about coming out with some programs, and I know that many of the businesses may have seen that Pennsylvania has a loan. They're announcing their PIDA loans, their PIDA loans, that are going to go up to, I can't remember if it's 100,000 or 200,000. I'm not real sure on that, but the interest rates are what they're talking about, very low interest rates. So always look at other options as well. The SBA is a great way, to start, but you can apply for the loan. And then, if you find something better somewhere that would serve your purposes better, we're here to help you to get the best that you can for your business, whether that's the SBA or anything else. We also have other loan programs such as, our 7A, our 504. Those are programs that are still, out there, they're working. When you're talking about SBA loans, there's an issue that we always talk about called credit elsewhere. If a business can get credit elsewhere, typically they cannot get a loan from the SBA. With our disaster loan, that's a little bit different, because while a business may be doing really well or had been doing really well prior to a few days ago, they could have gotten credit elsewhere. But now, if you owned a trucking company and none of your trucks are on the road, none of your employees are working, then you could not get credit elsewhere because you don't have income coming in. So you automatically pass the credit elsewhere check because of the fact that your business is shut down because of the coronavirus. So, pretty much that's about, I think that was my last slide. You can check and see if I.
Yes, that was, Dr. Hunt.
Okay. All right. So, like I said, we're here, sba.gov. You can find my district office on there, on our website, and a lot of additional information. So we're here to help you. We're in this together. Like I said, anything we could do, let us know.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hunt. And as you mentioned, there are new programs coming out hourly. The state Department of Community and Economic Development is in the process of offering new programs. The city of Pittsburgh, counties are getting involved. So again, we encourage you to continually come back to our website where we can have the most recent resources of financing programs available.
Right, and even additional federal
Yes.
programs that are being announced.
Again, as a business owner, you need to have discussions with all of your creditors that you have now. And one of your main partners is your bank relationship that you already have. And so I'm now going to turn it over to Heather Thomas from Huntington Bank, who's going to kind of explain and provide some tips to you about how do you work with your bank during these difficult times. Heather, we need to unmute you.
I think that worked. Can everyone hear me?
We can now. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. Ray, thanks so much for the opportunity to have this platform to share with everyone today. We appreciate the Pitt Institute for Entrepreneurial Excellence in not only taking the initiative to put this together, but committing to ensure that updated information is put out to everyone so we can still help our communities through this global health crisis and the difficulty we foresee down the road. Really good information provided by Dr. Hunt. Thank you so much. It's so reassuring to hear the voice of the SBA here as well and know that that guidance is still available. Dr. Hunt, I've been talking to several folks from your office through the past weeks. They are available, they are armed and ready to help, and that's going to be very important to us during this time. As we move into our Our first slide here with introductions, I'll let you know that you'll be hearing from myself, Heather Thomas, as well as my colleague, Lindsay Koss today. We've been really grateful to have the opportunity to support our communities and our business owners with the help of Huntington Bank since 2010 and 2009, respectively. As we move forward into the first slide, what we want to bring to you today is a sense of best practices. We're taking a somewhat generic approach and hope to provide you with value that you can then take back to your bank. That said, having served as the region's #1 SBA lender for the past 10 years, we know that we have the opportunity to also share some of Huntington's philosophy with you as well. We hope that hearing our perspective as active SBA lenders in the industry can provide you with a sense of security and a sense of solace. Our approach has not changed here. In light of this global health crisis, health being the key word, we are in a unique situation. When we compare that to what we've seen through years like 07, 08, and 09, this is a much different animal that we have today. That was a financial crisis. This is a health crisis. In general, banks today are well capitalized and well positioned to be able to help their customers, including the business owners that they work with. It is our sincere desire here at Huntington to stay true to our values. We still have the same approach. We still want to keep it simple. We are here to understand your business goals and provide financial solutions that will support your success, even through this short-term difficulty. We hope to leave you with a sense of process and some insight into a planned approach that you can use and apply to your individual situation.
Heather,
As we
can we
move
just,
into the
Heather, can we take 1 second? We seem to have
Please.
lost the presentation. I'm going to, I think somebody else might have shared their screen, so I'm going to bring that back up. So I apologize to everybody who's watching.
No, when you bring it back up, just go to that Be Proactive slide, and I think we'll be good. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, no problem. There we go. Thank you.
Perfect. No problem at all. That's a really minor blip for today. All right, getting back on track here. We really encourage you above anything else to be proactive. Do not plan to sit back, ride out the storm, or see how things go. Please reach out to your bank. Please let them know if you are currently struggling or what the struggle could be in the future, what challenges you foresee on the horizon. Some businesses are busier than ever right now. That puts a lot of strain on business as well. Some businesses will feel that immediately if they're no longer able to open their doors and take in clients. That's a more immediate need. Whatever position you're in, be communicative with your lender, your bank, your accountant. Reach out to the SBA to understand your resources. Do not delay that. Like Dr. Hunt said earlier, put yourself in a position to have options available to you and be able to react to those when they are needed. We encourage you to set up appointments to review not just your loan side, but also your deposit side with your financial institution. Talk to your accountant, talk to your lender, help them understand your working capital needs. They can give you guidance. They can talk to you about how to evaluate your fixed costs through the next 3 to 6 months. They can give you other capital access options that exist. Those rates that Dr. Hunt mentioned were really, really appealing. That's wonderful. Also keep timelines in mind too. It's okay to work in tandem between your lender and SBA options that may exist to put yourself in a position to move forward with the best capital structure for you when you need it. I will say to please expect questions. We have relief money available to you. We want to help you through this. There will still be follow-up questions. We will still want to dig in and understand the need. And I want to let you know that as you do that, please stay diligent in getting back to your lender with those responses. Again, put us in a position where we can have something on the table for you that you can pull the trigger on as soon as you need to. I'm going to turn the call over to Lindsay now, who's going to talk to you a little more about preparedness and also how you can start to implement a plan through this time of uncertainty.
Thank you, Heather. As we think about the appointments you would make with your lender, the discussions you would have with them, and with your, it's important to be as prepared as you possibly can. The lenders, we can speak from our experience right now, but I can say it's universal, I'm certain. We're receiving calls from all of our clients on these uncertain times. As Dr. Hunt said, we've all experienced disaster before and crunches, but to affect all the segments at once across such a broad swath of our community is really almost unprecedented. So your lender is dealing with a lot of volume, and they're looking to be responsive, and we are looking to roll out programs. But we also want to make sure we really understand your needs. Make sure that you and your lender put together a plan that's not just the knee-jerk reaction, the quick payment relief that you might definitely need, but that you also take an approach that is going to foresee your immediate need, your mid, and your long-term need. And you have to take steps to be as prepared for that conversation, to be proactive, as Heather had said, and drive that conversation, not just to what can I do right now in this moment of panic and crisis, but how do we build on that for something over the next few quarters, out to the next year. As Dr. Hunt said, we don't really know when the end is in sight. So please work with your advisors. I know that I have mutual clients with many of their participants on the call today. The IE can help you with this. Certainly your accounting firm can help you with this. If you need assistance or dig in, you may not be able to get an appointment with them prior to needing to meet with your lender, but know that this is going to be a conversation you're having on the financial end. So try to get your thoughts together and prepare some questions for yourself and work with your advisors to the extent you can. And even if it's an ongoing conversation where you meet with your lender and you go back to your advisors for some more detail, but know that this is a key part of the conversation you need to be having. We need to understand really what your working capital requirements are going to be, and we can't understand that without your input. So we are going to need to know and think through what is the situation with your receivables, what is sort of not collectible now potentially, or which of your clients are going to need you to extend terms beyond contracts. What does that, and on the flip side, what is your accounts payable situation? How are things working with your vendors? Are they maybe needing to be more restrictive on the terms they had been offering you? Maybe they just can't afford to do it and they are going to be shrinking their terms. Have you been sort of carrying a nice comfortable balance with them based on your long relationship, but now they need you to catch up for them to remain, given the pressure on them as well as small businesses in this environment. So this is going to all inform your working capital needs. In addition to speaking with your lender, there are other ways you can try to landlord accommodations and other ways you can try to make adjustments to these fixed expenses that are going to feed into what your working capital needs, and then of course what your inventory obligations are going to be. So these are questions to think through. Next slide. These are questions to think through for those discussions, but there's also a longer period of uncertainty. So having that working capital sort of understanding will help you know if you're asking your lender for some additional working capital right now, but it's only part of it. It's also about evaluating your relationship with your lender. There's the loan that you think of, the mortgage payment, and making those payments to the loan, that's always the top priority in terms of payments. But it's not the only aspect of your funding, and sometimes we forget about, and we've been blessed with a really robust economy here in the last few years in our region, and we haven't actually had to take a hard look at some of the covenants in our funding. So make sure you are familiar with what those mean, what the implications are. Make sure your current deposit accounts and treasury management settings that you have on your accounts, if your volumes are really changing, maybe you need to reevaluate that and get yourself into a right-sized situation if you're not going to be running that kind of volume through. You don't want to hit fees on your deposit side that you just don't need at this point. So make sure you ask your lender to also make sure, your bank, to make sure that they've evaluated that as well. And then think through the covenants with your lender, double check with your accountant. If you foresee maybe you can continue to make your loan payments without any hardship, but you are going to perhaps violate some of these covenants, that's still a conversation you want to have with your lender. You want to think through what those options are. How can you proactively plan for this? What are the implications of that going to be? And that feeds into line of credit availability. When your accounts receivables are not collecting, your vendors are becoming a little bit more aggressive, and your inventory is not turning as well, we'll see a lot of our small businesses who are in a borrowing base governing their working capital line of credit, that they are going to fail that borrowing base potentially in this and be prepared for what does that mean? Does that mean that you need to ask your lender for some additional permanent working capital to get you through this period? I know that's a solution we utilize a great deal to make sure that we do that, but it's easier for a lender to say yes to that now when we have the financial history of January, February, March, and a strong 19 potentially. If we're trying to look at that come August, it just gets harder for any lender to say yes to that if you've had challenges now. So be proactive with your lender, plan, think through your working capital needs. It may not all be a revolving situation anymore because of the changes to your borrowing base. So think that through and be proactive and plan to have a thoughtful discussion. And I know that there are many advisors in the small business community with tools. The SBA has technical support as well. The SBDCs deliver so much to the small business community. So take advantage of those resources to plan and put a proactive, thoughtful approach together, not just for the immediate concern, but something that's going to try to address the needs that you're going to have over the next 12 months. Thank you.
Okay, our next speaker will be David Wilke from Wilke and Associates regarding the tax implications from the COVID-19 relief. And Jessica, can you make an announcement, please?
Sure. I just wanted to remind all of the participants that we do have a live Q&A that is going on during the presentation. So if you have a question you would like to pose for our speakers, please feel free to enter it. It should be on the right side of your screen as you're viewing the presentation. So please feel free to submit your Q&As and we'll try to get to as many of those as we can at the end. Thank you.
Okay, David, if you would hit *6, I believe.
Thank you for holding the conference. Thank you kindly for all of the listeners being brave leaders at this time. Our CPA firm is just amazed at the creativity, resolve, and caring nature shown by our business owner clients. And we also know everyone listening wants to follow the laws. We're here to help you, number one, understand those from a tax perspective and business perspective, and number two, comply, but also keep your business intact. So right now we are completing, and I hope many other CPA firms are doing the same thing, completing the disaster loans as outlined by Dr. Hunt earlier. We are encouraging our clients to talk with their bankers, as Lindsay, Heather indicated. That's very important to manage that relationship. And then the next thing is we're managing, helping our clients manage their biggest partner, which is generally the federal government, which can take up to 30 to 50% of your profits, as everybody on the call would know. Managing that partner, fortunately, they're a good partner because they have made some concessions to small business owners, which we're going to discuss. The number one concession is the filing due date, just as of last evening, was extended from April 15th to July 15th. So that is the federal tax filing deadline without an additional extension. You will file your tax returns by July 15th of 2020. Payments are also due on July 15th. As far as we know at this point, the state of Pennsylvania has not complied with that filing extension, although we do expect that to occur. We also have limits on the amount of money that can be extended under the law. If the amount that you owe is over $1 million as an individual, that payment in excess of $1 million would need to be paid without penalty and interest by April 15th. For companies, it's over $10 million. There's a notice 2020-17 that provides all this information. We also want to discuss interest and penalty. If we can go to the next slide, next two slides, please.
Oops. Is this the correct slide, David? I'm sorry, the interest and penalty slide?
Yes, interest and penalty. Thank you.
Perfect.
Okay, yep. Great. Okay, and So with that, some of our clients have asked us, what happens if I am not able to pay my taxes on July 15th? The next filing date would be mandatory under the law currently October 15th for individuals, and there would be an interest component to that. That interest it would be calculated and accrued and then paid with your tax returns on October 15th. Also, it's very important to know that your first quarter
Can I stop you
estimated
there,
tax
David,
payments.
for 1 second?
Sure. Yeah.
Jessica, I think you have David muted. I think now you'll be able to hear everybody. Okay. So I apologize for that technical glitch, but maybe if you can maybe go back one slide before the interest and penalties, so everyone can get this information. David, I apologize for that. Just to go review everybody regarding the due dates. And so Jessica, again, I think you have to unmute yourself. Do it again, please. Okay, David, I think you could proceed.
Thank you, Ray. Start from the beginning?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So thank you, everyone, for joining. And we are thrilled that you are brave leaders. We want to help. We are amazed at your creativity, resolve, and caring nature. Our business clients want to follow the laws. We know you're no different. We're completing numerous disaster loans for our clients right now. We're helping our clients manage cash flow, recommending that they talk to their bankers, as Lindsay and Heather from Huntington Bank shared earlier. We also want to manage and help to manage our clients, and you should be managing your small business with regard to your partner, the federal government. Generally, the federal government would take 30 to 50% of your profits as a small business. Under the HR Act 6201, the Family First Coronavirus Response Act, there's some new regulations and also Treasury regulations that will help with regard to dealing with your partner, the federal government. The federal government, in this case, has been a helpful partner in the fact that they've extended deadlines for tax filing from April 15th until July 15th. This is outlined under Notice 2020-17. The tax payments, instead of being due April 15th, are now due July 15th. However, if you owe more than $1 million, you would pay the excess above $1 million by April 15th to avoid all penalty and interest. Our clients have asked about extending their payments beyond July 15th, and interest would apply in those situations. And if we can move to the interest and penalty slide.
You could start,
Okay.
David.
Yep, thank you. And at this point, we do expect a reduction in the interest rates for payments that might be extended from July 15th until the final date of filing of October 15th. Also noted is the first quarter of 2020. Those payments generally are due April 15th. They are now due July 15th of 2020. So the federal government, in conclusion, on taxes has extended all of your tax payments and deadlines. Sales tax relief has not been released yet, and we suggest to our clients at this point continue to file your sales tax accordingly for Pennsylvania, and also Pennsylvania taxes should be paid timely until we have further notice from Pennsylvania. If we go to the next slide on state filings, there are many states that have followed the federal guidelines for extending tax payments.
David, you're on tax estimates right now. Are you okay with tax estimates?
Yes. If we could go to the next slide, please.
Next
State
slide.
filing.
Okay, we're there.
Thank you. So now state filings, and due dates are in the process of being changed and following federal law. However, with last night being the first time the federal government passed the law for filing deadline to proceed until July 15th, we do expect Pennsylvania to follow suit hopefully very soon. And those payments and tax returns would be hopefully due July 15th. Under current law, it is April 15th. If we go to the next slide. One of the, and this is titled Businesses Under 50 People. One of the critical functions of HR 6201 for the Family First Coronavirus Response Act has made it now mandatory for small businesses, even under 50 people, under 500 to be exact, all businesses, to comply with a new Emergency Family Medical Leave Act. This will be covered more from the law firm Maiello, Brungo, and Maiello shortly. However, we want to make sure that the listeners understand the tax credit that is being offered by the federal government. And the tax credit would allow business owners to get a refund for payments of wages made under the Emergency FMLA Act on their subsequent filings on their Form 941 or quarterly payroll tax returns. We expect that these refunds will take maybe 1 to up to 3 or more quarters to be refunded in total, which creates a cash problem for the small business owner. We are paying wages as mandated by the government under unprecedented times. The government, as your partner under this mandate, has also provided relief. The problem is that the relief will not come immediately, which can create a cash shortfall in the company. If some clients and business owners are deemed to be in jeopardy, it's possible that they may be exempt from complying with the new FMLA regulations. Something called the Altman Z-score is what we use to determine the going concern availability of a company. You can talk to your accountant to discuss this and how you may apply through the Department of Labor for an exemption under 50 people of employees. This all takes effect before April 1st. The next slide, payroll tax credits, is where we explain the credits for small businesses, as we discussed earlier, that will be refunded under FMLA payments. However, there are caps and limitations to these credits. What is important to recognize is that the small business disaster, SBA small business disaster relief loans are available. To us, this is a very good opportunity to make sure that your company has the funds to pay wages for people not working and allow for that money to come back when you continue in business later this year. In that regard, the Small Business Administration loans should help to cover the shortfall of that labor until you get refunded by the federal government later in the year. Those are our highlights. And again, we thank you for being a part of the call, and thank you for giving us the opportunity to share some technical information to help small business owners. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Next slide, please. I would now like to introduce John Prorock, who is a partner with Maiello, Brungo, and Maiello, and he's going to provide some additional information on the Families First Coronavirus Response Act. So, John.
Thank you, Ray. Thanks, Ray. Lawrence Maiello, one of my partners, is also on the line and will interject when he has some pointers. But first, Lawrence and I would like to thank Ray and the entire SBDC, i.e. team for putting together this webinar and reaching out to the local businesses to provide them with the critical information that they need during this difficult time. So thank you, Ray, and your entire team. Briefly, Maiello, Brungo & Maiello is a 15-attorney law firm located on the south side in Pittsburgh. We represent small to mid-sized businesses in all aspects of their daily business relationships. And what we are going to talk about is the Family First Coronavirus Response Act that was just recently passed. On Wednesday night, March 18th, President Trump signed the Families First Coronavirus Response Act into law, and it takes effect in 15 days, which is, by my calculation, April 2nd, 2020. This law is comprehensive and touches upon numerous areas such as budgetary appropriations, waivers for school food services, tax credits, which David just addressed briefly, and of most concern to businesses, leave provisions for employees. So the Act contains two major points for small businesses: the Emergency Family Medical Leave Expansion Act and the Emergency Paid Sick Leave Act. We're first going to talk about the Emergency Family and Medical Leave Expansion Act. As a threshold matter, it is important to note that the Act does not expand the provisions of the FMLA, or the Family Medical Leave Act, for non-coronavirus related reasons. Thus, if an employee is currently out on FMLA leave for a different reason, these new provisions would not apply. Additionally, if an employee requests FMLA for a reason which is not related to the coronavirus pandemic, the new provisions would not apply. The emergency, and I'm going to refer to it as the Emergency Act rather than go through all the alphabet. The Emergency Act differs from the FMLA in important respects. For example, and this is really key for the small businesses, the FMLA leave is available only to an employee whose employer has at least 50 or more employees within a 75-mile radius of the employee's worksite. Thus, it does not apply to many small employers, but it covers all employers with 500 or more employees. The Emergency Act, in contrast, applies to any employer with fewer than 500 employees. And the Emergency Act has no mileage radius. The Emergency Act therefore governs smaller employees with fewer than 50 employees unless the Department of Labor decides to exempt such an employer on the grounds that the imposition of the requirements, the Emergency Act's requirements, would jeopardize the employer's ability to continue operating. So, in short, the emergency FMLA shortens the minimum period of employment from 12 months to just 30 days. So if you have an employee who's worked for you for at least 30 calendar days, that is the eligibility requirement, not the more standard 12 months and 1,250 hours during that 12-month period. Next, it is important to note that the provision of the new act only, we're still on the first slide, that the new act applies only to employees who are unable to work, and that includes teleworking. So if they can work remotely, they cannot claim leave or request leave. So those who are unable to work due to the need to care for their minor son or daughter if the child's school or child care facility has closed, or if the child care's provider is not available due to coronavirus related emergencies. Under these limited circumstances, the employee would be entitled to up to 12 weeks of paid leave. The first 10 days of that leave may be unpaid, but the employer may use, the employee, may use accrued paid time off during that initial period. So it's a 12-week period, but the first 2 weeks or the first 10 days is unpaid, but the employee can use PTO or any other paid time off to cover those first 2 weeks. For the subsequent 10-week period, the employee must be paid at 2/3 of their regular rate. The Act does cap the amount of payments at a maximum of $200 per day and a $10,000 amount in the aggregate. So essentially, after the first 2 weeks, for the balance of the 10 weeks, the employer has to pay the employee at 2/3 of their regular rate. And the Act goes through the formulas for payment based on what that employee is currently being paid. Now, the Act does provide for the Secretary of Labor to exempt small businesses, which is defined as those with fewer than 50 employees, if the required leave would jeopardize the viability of that business. However, at this point, I have not seen any proposed regulations from the Secretary of Labor regarding exemptions for businesses with fewer than 50 employees. Please note that the provisions expire on December 31st, 2020. All right, the next slide is regarding the Emergency Paid Sick Leave Act. In addition to the protections under the expanded FMLA provisions, the Act also provides a blanket paid sick leave benefit for employees who are unable to work, again, including teleworking. So if they're able to work from home, they cannot make a claim for the following coronavirus-related reasons. The employee is subject to a federal, state, or local quarantine or isolation order related to COVID-19. 2, the employee has been advised by a healthcare provider to self-quarantine due to concerns related to COVID-19. 3, the employee is experiencing symptoms of COVID-19 and is seeking a medical diagnosis. 4, the employee is caring for an individual who is subject to an order as described above. 5, the employee is caring for a son or daughter whose school or place of care has been closed and whose child care provider is unavailable due to COVID-19. 6, the employee is experiencing substantially similar conditions as specified by the Secretary of Human Health and Services in consultation with the Secretaries of Labor and Treasury. Full-time employees who seek paid leave are subject to up to 80 hours of paid sick leave. Part-time employees are entitled to a number of hours equal to the number of hours that such employee works on average over a 2-week period. Please note that there is no requirement that an employee work for a minimum period of time for the employer before they are entitled to this benefit. In general, leave time taken for reasons 1 through 3 are paid at the employee's regular rate of pay, subject to a daily limit of $511 and an aggregate limit of $110. Leave taken in relation to the reasons 4 to 6 described, essentially caring for a family, can be paid at 2/3 of the employee's regular rate of pay, subject to a daily cap of $200 and an aggregate of $2,000. Importantly, an employer cannot require an employee to utilize other sick leave provided by the employer before the employee utilizes the sick leave granted under the Emergency Act. Like the FMLA provisions, these sick leave provisions will sunset on December 31st, 2020. As I mentioned earlier, the law grants the Secretary of Labor the authority to issue regulations to exempt small businesses with fewer than 50 employees from these requirements to provide sick leave for a child if school or place of care is closed. Again, we have not seen any regulations or other publications from the Secretary of Labor. So that is the current status. You can move to the next slide. These provisions augment the existing Family Medical Leave Act, as I discussed earlier in the presentation. So they do not replace those elements of the statute. On our webpage, we have a COVID-19 guidance and resource page that is being updated throughout the day, every day. So we certainly encourage you to go to mbm-law.net and you'll see an icon to click on to go to that page. The next page, please. Again, if you have any questions on the Act or any of the other legal processes,
is now exiting.
You can reach out to Lawrence. His email is there above, or to me. Our office, in pursuant to the governor's order, is closed physically, but we are all working remotely and have access to our network and to the phones and email. So thank you, Ray.
Okay, thank you, John. I now would like to turn it over to Todd Whiteman from Enscoe Long to discuss maybe some questions you may have that you want to have discussions with your insurance issues. So Todd, if you can unmute yourself and proceed. I believe *6 would do that.
Okay, can you hear me okay now?
We can, thank you.
All right, perfect. All right, thank you again to everybody on the call. Appreciate it, certainly the IE, but everybody involved here. So I know we're looking to keep this around an hour, and we do want to get through some Q&A. Luckily, for once, my part is a little bit quicker than normal. We can get bogged down in a lot of details when it comes to insurance, but in this case, it is pretty straightforward. So most importantly, that first page, please do keep in mind, all carriers and policy language can be different. There are standardized forms out there.
Unknown participant is now joining.
There are also carriers that utilize their own forms, so this is a broad brush. However, typically this will apply to every policyholder.
Todd, can I have you? Can I hold you? Can I hold you right there? Sure.
Yes.
Again, Jessica, can you make sure that everyone can hear Todd? Okay.
I just took mine off speakerphone too, just to make sure.
Okay. Again, I think you could proceed.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so we are on the slide, starting to talk
Second
about
slide.
property and casualty.
Second
Yes,
slide,
second
please.
slide. So from a property standpoint, the biggest question that we're receiving on our office over the last week and a half has been in relation to business income and extra expense. So loss of revenue for businesses and extra expenses they incur. Most policies do automatically provide coverage for this type of situation, for loss of income or extra expense incurred. However, it is typically termed in there that this has to be a covered cause of loss under the policy, and it has to specifically be a situation at your location. So typically we're talking about an office fire as the best example. So specific cause of loss at a location of the insured. That is what triggers business income and loss of money. In this case, everything that has happened to this point does not trigger that coverage, whether a voluntary shutdown or a required shutdown from the government. Neither of those trigger coverage under a property policy for loss of income and extra expense. Certainly that is the biggest concern based on the financial difficulty we're all feeling. So that is the key item there. From a property or from a liability standpoint, liability coverage can extend. This would definitely be on a case-by-case basis. But if a lawsuit is brought against you as an employer, as a business, and somebody is able to state that based on your decisions, based on things you've done, somebody has become sick and contracted the virus due to your negligence. While we expect those will be very rare, we do know that coverage could apply, but it will depend on the specifics of any claim brought. We do highly recommend that anybody, if you have any questions or any thoughts of a possible claim, that you do reach out to your insurance agent, to your insurance carrier, have them decline that in writing, because we know that there are some cases that may get through. This would be one of those areas. Next slide. From a workers' compensation standpoint, very big concern as well, in the fact that a lot of folks have been at work over the last couple of weeks, certainly have been around other individuals, and most likely will find out that people that we work with ended up with the virus, and we may as well. If that's the case, right now, this is something that, number one, starts with the insurance carrier. So they'll have to determine, they have 21 days to determine if they want to cover a claim or not, based on the merits of that claim. So that will be the first step. They have to, of course, abide by Pennsylvania law and then by federal law. So depending on what comes over the next couple of weeks as claims start being turned in, we know they will be turned in. We don't have anything yet to tell us how they will be handled. This will be on a case-by-case basis. What we do know for the most part is that it has to be a part of your operation, of your job, to truly trigger coverage. So we talk a lot about our hospital workers at that point, who clearly are coming into contact with the virus. So if that is part of their job, they have more likelihood of their claim being accepted versus being denied. The other aspect that is well worth noting is that it will be very difficult to pinpoint the actual time of injury, if you will, and that's what a workers' compensation claim needs to have happen in order to trigger coverage, is a date of loss, a physical incident where that injury occurred. And an injury can include a sickness, but the proof of how and where, and basically did that come from the work environment or from the home environment or any other. So that proof will be very difficult. So we do expect a lot of claims that are turned in to be denied based on that. It will simply take time for us to develop more information as these claims come in. Next slide. From an event cancellation standpoint, so for all of us, certainly for nonprofit organizations that might have fundraisers, this is key, but for a lot of for-profits, a lot of association members, a lot of businesses that rely on events as part of their operation. So from an event cancellation standpoint, there are exclusions specifically in event policies to exclude these types of events for very good reason. The carriers simply don't want to cover it. They never have. They still don't right now. And even though there is a push to start getting some coverage out there in light of what we're seeing in the last few days, the chances of that actually happening are still pretty slim in our industry. There are certain things we just don't look to cover. So from an event cancellation, a lot of folks are canceling events. We're all seeing anything from wedding venues to proms and all those things being canceled. But when they are business related, there still would be no coverage for that. So you should not expect any reimbursement or anything to that manner. Food contamination, specifically geared towards restaurants, towards organizations that serve food to others, such as nonprofits, food banks, senior centers, things of that nature, hospitals, schools. The food contamination coverage will most likely respond under most policy language. However, those limits are usually limited. Sometimes we see up to 100,000 purchase for specific entities, but very typical is 25,000. So that would just cover the expenses from a contamination standpoint. If it is food that is touched by staff, and then the disease is transmitted from there to whoever might be eating it. That does not provide coverage typically under most forms. That is not going to provide coverage if you purchased bad meat, bad products, something like that. This truly would be if it is coming from our employee through the food to the individual we're serving. but there could be some limited coverage there depending on your operation. Next slide. So I do apologize. Rick Enscoe is going to take this part. He's my partner on the employee benefits side. However, he got pulled out of this call about 10 minutes in to handle a client emergency. So he had to hop off the phone and take care of that. There is information in here on the employee benefits, the next couple of slides. But really what we're seeing there as a whole are our main carriers here locally, Highmark and UPMC. You'll see some information that they have put out in these next two slides. They are working diligently, trying to figure out what to do step by step, how things will be handled. There's information in there regarding COBRA and how that will be handled. Certainly one of the biggest questions is if we have layoffs, how will they handle? If we're still paying premiums, how much time do we have to make those payments? They are looking to relax their payment terms overall. I know Highmark has not verified all of that at this point. However, they are looking to extend those payment terms and do all they can to try to make this less of a burden. From a property casualty standpoint, most carriers have come out and stated that they will relax their cancellations. That if somebody is in cancellation, they will extend those 30 days, 45, maybe 60. That is carrier by carrier. So you definitely want to check with your specific carrier on this, but they're all looking to extend those terms to make sure that folks don't get canceled and businesses don't get canceled for non-payment of premium. That's about it for us. So I'd like to hand it back, but if there are any questions, we're happy to assist and discuss.
Okay, thank you, Todd. Jessica, if you could proceed, go back a couple slides. One more. I now would like to introduce Bob Stein, who is the Associate Vice Chancellor for Innovation and Entrepreneurship and the Executive Director at the Institute for Entrepreneurial Excellence. He's going to provide a little guidance. We've received a lot of questions regarding, is your business to be shut down or not, but give you some information to get clarification and make some closing remarks. So Bob, I'll turn it over to you. We need to unmute yourself.
Great, thanks, Ray. We're going to start on slide 42, titled the Pennsylvania Commonwealth. And we have received a lot of communication in the Commonwealth over the past several days, including a directive last night that all non-life sustaining businesses had to close by 8 p.m. yesterday, the 19th. The list has been published on the DCED website. There have been a lot of questions on who can close, who can stay open, what is life sustaining, what is not. On slide 42, there's a link to the list that segments businesses by industry, and you can look up your industry and determine if you are required to stay open or required to close. If you have a question on that, there's an email address listed on slide 42 that you can contact, and you can also request to for an exemption or a waiver. For example, we had a question from one of the clients earlier if there was a printer was printing healthcare related information for another printer for a hospital, so they wanted to request a waiver. And so I would, if I were that business owner, I would tell them to email that email address listed on slide 42, so there's documentation of their request. There are other, in addition to the SBA disaster loans, there are other financial resources that the Wolf administration is making available, such as PETA loans. Those are listed on the resource, the URL on the DCD website. Again, if you think you need an exemption, please just email and request that documentation just so you have it. And I would take a look at the full list of life-sustaining businesses that is on slide 43. We want to thank all of our participants and speakers today. Their contact information is listed on slide 44 and 45. And feel free to contact us at the Institute for Entrepreneurial Excellence. We can help you remotely navigate the financing and disaster loan process. All of our services are at no cost. On our website, entrepreneur.pitt.edu, we have a COVID-19 resources page that is available. We have just posted a business checklist for handling this crisis that is listed on that page. The slides from this presentation are available, and we will post the recording on this page shortly. In addition, we have many other links of business resources and financial support that are available for your review. Like I said, any type of business, please feel free to contact us for support as we are here for you here at the University of Pittsburgh. Due to our time restriction and the amount of folks on this call, we ask you to send your direct questions directly to the speakers. Their contact information, as I mentioned, is listed in the slides, or you can contact us at iee@innovation.pitt.edu, or you can contact Ray Vargo. His contact information is listed. So we thank
Unknown
everybody.
participant is now exiting.
We thank everyone for joining us today, and we look forward to continuing to provide you with the resources to navigate this crisis in the upcoming week. Thank you so much.